I swear to God, these things keep coming out of the bloody woodwork. So I thought I'd make a quick one this week. Here is a Army Armament L85 I recently acquired. Doesn't really matter that it is an Army Armament, or a L85 for that fact. What matters is it needs a Mosfet in it, because someone put a micro switch in it. And I thought, seeing as this is technically my area of expertise, being, an electronic engineer, I'd talk about what a Mosfet actually is and why a lot of people put them in guns. Yeah. Right, so I've drawn up some basic circuit diagrams so we can go over what the reason is to have a Mosfet. But first of all, let me talk about Mosfets themselves. So I'm just going to switch over to the screen, and here we can see the Mosfet, and when I hover over it you can see it comes up with DG and S, and that stands for drain, gate and source. Effectively, where do you want your power to go in? The drain. How do you control it with the gate, and where does it come out? The source. Weirdly, I always thought it would make more sense to have the source as the input and the drain as the output, but no, that's how they do it. I guess power drains in and comes out the source. And effectively, a Mosfet is just an electrically controlled switch. So if you, in this case, this is a N-type Mosfet. You've got N and P-type Mosfets. Without going into too much details, an N-type Mosfet, if you put a positive voltage on the gate, it will turn on and let current flow through it. And if you take the positive voltage away, it will turn off. Whereas with an P-channel Mosfet, if you put a positive voltage on the gate, it will turn off, and if you take it away, it will turn on. So here we're using an N channel, and we're going to put a positive voltage on it to turn it on. But first of all, let's look at the basic circuit, which is a mock-up of a non-Mosfetted gun, i.e. you've got a battery, your trigger contacts and the motor. So here we have the battery, here's our switch representing our trigger contacts, and here is a bulb representing the motor. Now the key thing to look at here is this value here when we close the switch. This is the current flowing through the circuit. Let's hit run. Boom. So you saw that originally jumped up to 40 volts and 40 amps, and then has settled around 12 amps. And that's actually quite indicative of what real motors do. They can draw upwards of 50 amps on startup. Effectively, they need a lot of power to be able to turn over. Now, in this circuit, we're using a 12 volt battery, i.e., effectively an 11.1 LiPo. So there, 50 amps at 12 volts is a lot of power. In fact, let's do the calculation. So that's 600 watts of power going through your trigger contacts. And that's enough for, when you break your trigger contacts, for sparks to cross between them, or arc between them. And that is the principle of arc welding, is to create a small gap with a high voltage or high power difference across it, which then causes a spark to form and burns two metals together effectively. What does trigger arcing do? Well, it produces carbon buildup on it, which in turn makes your trigger contacts a higher resistance, which means you get less power through it, which is obviously not what you want. But also, you can get the occasion where you've got so much power going through it that the arc welds the trigger contacts together, and then you have a runaway gun on your hands, and the only way to stop it firing is to disconnect the battery, which is obviously something you don't want. Now, let's have a look at the system with the Mosfet in it. So let me just walk you through it. So you've still got your basic circuit here, i.e. motor connected to the positive battery and then to the negative part of the battery through our Mosfet. And then we have our switch coming down here to the gate. And I've put a resistor in here, and this resistor pulls the gate to ground, so it's off when the switch is open. And then when the switch is closed, it then puts a positive voltage on the gate and opens the Mosfet, turns it on, and current flows. So if we make sure that's running, we can see no current's flowing, and then when we close the switch, suddenly current starts flowing and all is good. And then if we look down here, this will tell us the current through the switch, and it's saying 0 amps. But in reality, you're getting a trickle current through there, which you can control the amount of current by that resistor. So here we have a 1K resistor. So let's just do the calculation. So in this case, we're doing V over R equals I. So voltage is 12 volts. We're dividing that by R. We're dividing that by a 1000 ohm resistor. So we're getting 12 milliamps flowing through that switch, which is more than adequate for a switch. And we can step that resistor up to something bigger, like a 10K, and then we'll get 1.2 milliamps flowing through it, which is negligible. And all of our high current is flowing through our Mosfet, and provided the Mosfet manufacturer has chosen the right type of Mosfet. Provided the Airsoft Mosfet manufacturer has chosen the right type of Mosfet, it should happily be able to handle 50 amp plus current spikes through it. So that's just a basic rundown of how Mosfet systems work and why you use them. Obviously these circuits are hugely simplified from the Mosfets you tend to get. Normally those are technically ECUs with a Mosfet, i.e. there's a microcontroller and they're looking at the trigger looking at the trigger signal, and there's other bits and pieces like a flyback diode to dissipate the EMF the motor will generate and stuff like that. That's all kind of complexy stuff that we don't need to talk about today. So that was just a brief rundown of how Mosfets work and what they do in your gun. Effectively, they protect your trigger contacts by putting the high current through them as opposed to the trigger. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, consider subscribing if you aren't already, dropping a like in this video and commenting on it. I don't know what you'd say. Merry Christmas maybe. Otherwise, check out one of my other videos to see more of me, sucking at gameplay, reviewing stuff badly, breaking things but trying to fix them, and probably explaining stuff badly as well. That's all for this. See you around.